So we spent the first half of the notes talking about what the definition of a function is, the two types of numbers that make up the function, your domain, your range, the different names that you may see for domain and range, and then how to identify a function with the table of numbers. So the next thing I want to go over in your notes is what we call a function rule. And the cool thing about a function rule is that you've been using these for years, you just didn't know it, because a function rule is simply an equation. It's just a special name for an equation. So here's what I want you to write down. A function rule is an equation that describes a function. Okay? So it's just a simple equation. Like if you were to look at it, you know that you would see that it's just a plain old equation. Now, what do you do with it? Here's what you write next. You're going to be given input values, which, if you remember from the front page of your notes, the input values, that's your domain, that's always going to be your x values. So you'll be given the input values, and then you'll use the rule to get your output, or your y values. So you'll be given the input values, and you'll give the input values, then you use the function rule to find the output values, which will be your y values. Okay? So you've seen this before, you've probably done it before, but it kind of looks a little different because the notation is different. But basically, this is what we call a plug and chug. I'm going to give you a set of numbers, that's going to be your input or your x values, and I'm going to give you an equation, that's going to be your function rule. And you're going to evaluate that equation for every x. So for every x value, you'll use the equation to get your y value. Now understand, when we have a function rule, I'm not going to ask you the same question I asked you in example 1. You can't look at an equation and determine if it's a function. The only way you know if it's a function is if you graph it, have it as a table, or do what we're about to do, just use your y and look at your numbers. So I'm never going to give you a function rule and say, is it a function? I'm going to give you a function rule, and then I'm going to give you the input, and you're going to tell me what the output is. So let's look at example 2. Okay? Example 2, if you look at your directions, it says the domain, remember the domain's your input, for the function, and you see the function equation, that's the rule. The rule is y equals 2x squared minus 7. So that's your function rule. The domain for this function rule is 0, 2, 5, and 7. So this is your input right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take every value of x that you have here, plug it in here, and get a value for y. So if I have 4 different values here for x, your answer is going to be 4 different values for y. Easy peasy. Now, before we jump in, let's look at this equation. You need to know what to do first. This is your PEMDAS. What do we do first? Well, first of all, hopefully you would recognize I'm going to square it. That's x squared. So the first thing you're going to do is squared. Then you're going to multiply it by 2. And then whatever number you get there as that product will subtract from 7. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to stop the video, and we'll do this in the next one because we're going to have to plug and chug all of these. We don't use calculators in class, but because we're squaring the numbers and doing a little multiplying, if you want to grab one, just kind of make this go faster, go ahead. And